I have good news! If your water heater recently exploded, then it is scientifically proven that you can boil water through the friction of grinding your thighs together. Important note. And, well, we have a Pr0nogo versus benno match set here. We shall take a look at, I believe it is Zerg versus Terran. Benno practicing up his TVZ. It's been a little while since I've seen Benno play, so we'll see how this goes. So it's been a while since I've seen Pr0nogo play. Pr0nogo is more of an early game player, and Benno is more of a late game player, so Pr0nogo has no respect for arthritis whatsoever. You people really just want to cause yourself irreparable damage, don't you? Absolutely unnecessary, you know? What map was this? Repulsion? Well, this is a map I'm somewhat familiar with. It's kind of large and in charge. Oh, Benno possibly gonna go for the quadruple stockade opener. One can only hope he reverts back to his roots. No, he's also destroying his fingers. What a goofball. I highly doubt we're going to see Pr0nogo go for early expand in any of these games. He would only do that. No, never mind, he's going to. Oh, okay, I was going to say he only does that against me because he knows I'm terrible at this game, but maybe he knows that Benno also prefers longer games and is not as terrible, so maybe it'll be fast expanded to some kind of early aggression. It will be a Maverick, not a Cyprian. They are more expensive now, and he's not really too keen on amassing gas at the moment. Quaz has become the standard. Nothing too out of the ordinary at the moment. Two Mavericks here are going to deny this Droleth, but the fact he sees two Mavericks here probably tells him all he really needs to know at the moment. Don't think Benno is going to be trying anything particularly outlandish. Just not terribly common for him, although I think we did see him go some fast rates in some earlier matches. It's just, well, not terribly common. But something to keep in mind, he might do that, right? You know, it either would be something like a bait into fast wraith or just whatever standard, right? Like, you can make the call on that, and it might be some wraiths, but they're going to be a little delayed with the lone gas worker, so certainly not nearly as prominent as they could have been. If he really wanted to go for early wraiths, he could have had them out by now. He's not going to be terribly effective at this time. That said, take a little while for Pr0nogo to get in motion here. Worker just casually walks away, no fucks given. Nope, he's coming back. I don't know, maybe he really wanted to see what was in here and figured it wasn't gonna get away anyways. It will be a wraith. Double gas now, but definitely not gonna be spitting them out anytime soon. Macro hatch. No other tech structures, just the two gas miners. Pr0nogo maybe looking to end this based on just some timing push here. I don't know, maybe he's like intentionally mimicking builds other people have gone just to kind of give Benno something to work off of. I think he senses that there might be a wraith here. No overcommitment at the moment, just gonna be one Spraith and the rest workers and a handful of quasis. Wraith doesn't do any early harass, just scouting. You know, you got a lot of APM, but you've got idle workers. That means your APM is not effective APM. So something can work a little bit on less spam or effectiveness. It's one thing to have an IAPM from spamming, actually turning it into active actions, eliminating things like idle workers, standing around, stuff like that. You see him cycling around, right? But it still took a while for the worker to move. So that's what you've got to be sort of focusing on, is not just cycling your hotkeys and spam clicking, but actually having some awareness of what is going on. And then turning that APM into something that is active. When you see APM spam in professional play, generally speaking, it's for just warming up, right? So I thought Popo was going to go for a timing push here. He certainly seemed poised to it. But he's actually just going to go for a low gas third base. So that's a little unusual. Some gas mining from here, but not fully saturated in the main, not harvesting from any of the ridges. So I'm not really sure what he's planning, but it's a little, to me it feels almost kind of mismatched at the moment. I feel like if Benno wanted to, he could push really hard right now, but he's not. And because he's not and taking his second so late, well, I'm not sure stimming all of them was really that helpful, but some tickling here, but not terribly effective. Pepe starting to float some money here, possibly just going to go straight to tier 2. Looking to bank up some Cyprians and various workers here, but Benno is starting to slip behind on the worker account. A lot of quasis just sort of sitting here, maybe conscious of a potential timing push. 2 OVs and another hatch. If tier 2 is coming, it's going to be kind of late because of that. I feel like the 2 OVs may have been kind of a little bit of an overreaction. You only saw 3 wraiths and they did nothing but take tons of damage. They're not going to be doing a lot of damage to you. I mean, it's great to punish them and all, but you could have just held out for tier 2 and never bothered. Well, he may yet use them. Lots of Mavericks coming here, but it's a losing clock for Benno. He knows that Popo's on 3 bases and hasn't done anything besides build some tier 1 and otherwise bulked up. Tier 2 is almost certainly where he's going, which means you need to be prepared for that. Now, he hasn't shown any other attack at this moment, but it's very cheap for him to build any attack at this moment. If he feels intimidated by the obelisks and isn't willing to scout anymore, then he's not going to know what tech that's going to be. He may never change his tech. A whole bunch of Lyrilisks would be just fine. They'll do very well against the infantry, but no, he's actually getting Zorkas. Which is kind of a strange choice, I feel like. Zorkas doesn't do too much for you at tier 2, does it? Unless something... No, I don't think anything changed. No, tickling the Zorkas. Gonna get a handful of kills in here, but nothing meaningful. Does have one cleric here trying to undo the damage from that stim that seems like a long time ago. Popo doesn't even need to commit to this at all. More hatches at this point. Tier 2 at this stage is just kind of like a footnote from him. It's not going to do him too much good. The Wraiths appear cloaked when they're attacking. That's a bug for sure. They're also probably about to die if they don't. He was going to move them, but then he didn't. So that's a disaster. Circuit got placed over here and is going to die terribly. The Quasi is charged forward on a move command, and a bunch of them died for very little gain. The others don't pose any threat at all. The Quasi pool is morphing, but this third base gets seeded. A single Cyprian has arrived, getting no worker kills, but killing the last. Still a little confused about the Zorkas. Maybe he was going to get Lakizelisks. I'm perplexed about that one. Ahmed is on the scene. Feels like Popo kind of was a little aimless at this stage. Some Lakizelisks aren't going to burrow here. There is no detection at the moment. And Benno's gonna walk onto them and lose. Oh my god, it's Benno, my man, you were actually in a position to deal some extremely heavy damage there, but did not move away nearly in time. All you had to do was back off or charge the ramp much faster than you did. Much faster than you did. Now you lost all of your pressure, and all you did at that point was just slightly stem the tide. Pr0nogo will immediately rebuild, send all of his Zeths down here, and they're gonna die a terrible death. And now you don't have an army, and Pr0nogo has tier 2 and can do literally whatever he wants. Just a stack of Gorgacores would probably end the game at the moment. Instead, he charges in his Killis, losing all but one. And Benno is not sure how to handle this. He has the tech necessary to make Anseals, but only now is he making them. Even though he saw the Zorkes come up. And was attacking it with his Wraith, so that was kind of a lackluster response. He's going to try to stand on it and get rid of it, which he does. Lots of Quasis, again, can just turn them into Lyrilisks. They'll deal some area effect damage, and I have no idea why he's sending out Ahmed and the Clerics to their certain doom. And the horde of Tickles slowly approaches. The 1 health Wraith is instantly annihilated. The Cyprians on the ledge are just annihilating him. I thought he was going to morph them into Lyrilisks, but instead he kind of... There you go. A little late. A little late, but it's coming. And Benno is not at all respecting that this is a thing. Right? He's not poking over here to see if they're holding... You know, send over the Cloaked Wraith to see if they're going to camp there. Or, you know, more concerning would be if there's, like, suddenly Hydras over there that could turn into Bactylisks, because that's bad. That gets scouted by the burrowed Zeths. The Lakizlisks are going to charge over here. He's got 2 Anseals, but they're not holding the ledge. So those died immediately. There's very, very little standing army for Benno at the moment. He's got a lot of money and not really a lot of ways to spend it at the moment. Dies miserably. The 2 Anseals here could die very easily. Ahmed dies a disgusting death, absolutely miserable. There's only 1 Ahmed in that bunker, and there's none in that one. Oh God! Water boiler moments. Everything lifts off, but at this stage, it's pretty much already decided. There is no standing military force here. It's just Ahmed and some Anseals that refuse to protect him as he charges forward for one glorious last stand. The lone Maverick holds the ramp. Definitely needed some more stockades, some more active pumping going on. And you see that when the time really matters, the APM kind of crashed, right? And the GG is called. So, there's a few things we note from this game. Is a lack of decisiveness from both parties, really, but Benno more so showing that there was some kind of like desync in kind of what he really wanted to do at the stage in the game, where the aggression on the 3rd was good and did some damage, but he needed to keep it up. He was definitely in a position to deal massive damage to Pr0nogo. But lost everything instead. So on to game 2. It'll be the same positions. Also Tyranids versus Space Marines. A very common matchup within Diablo 2. Featuring Dante from the Castlevania series. Pr0nogo is purple. And Benno is kind of like a piss yellow. It's not quite the Miku urine color, but yeah, just haven't drank it long enough, I suppose. Will Pr0nogo do the exact same thing, or is he just going to go into hard pressure this time? I feel like coming off that game, Pr0nogo could feel compelled very easily to go hard pressure in this, but maybe he'll just do more of the same and see if benno will try to flex against it in a different manner than he did last time. The Wraiths accomplished basically nothing. They came out too late and in too few numbers. And the committal to 2 Obeliths overshadowed the cost at that point, but ultimately didn't mean anything because the slow tier 2 that turned into tier 1 units for the longest time had very little effect on the map. Honestly, Pr0nogo could have just charged it down with Quasilith, so it didn't really matter what he built at that point. Just have like 50 of them, and then Ahmed can't burn everything down at once. And definitely I felt like Pr0nogo could have gone to tier 2 a lot sooner. If that was what his goal was. Maybe he just went to tier 2 because he thought he was going to be under more pressure than he was and was kind of reserving. Using an Obelith to scout, especially after the Wraiths were dealt with, would not be a bad call. To at least see if he's doing a tech switch going to Atlas, or if he is just still going to pump out Bio at that point. He had Zaths all over the map, so he wasn't going to miss out on too many expansion attempts. So it's actually a fast watchdog this time from benno. And not even before he even scouts. He's obviously been traumatized by Gorgs and Naths a lot, but I feel like if you're already going Mavericks against the Zerg, you don't need the watchdog. That's a lot of money. It could have gone into a second stockades. It's got an idle worker over here. Again, with a lot of APM being burned right now. And yeah, an idle worker just relaxing over here, right? You know, focus less on your actions per minute. Focus more on awareness, right? Like awareness of what's going on. That's the most important thing. You're going to have half the APM of these players, and if each of those actions means something, you'll perform way better. Right? Focus on eliminating redundant clicks. Eliminating, you know, like academic approaches to how you're cycling through stuff. Understand what is a productive routine and what is blinding you, right? Like only now did that worker get moved. So, you know, you have a build order and kind of a process in which you do things, and then that just causes you kind of to tunnel vision. So this is different from Pr0nogo this time. He is going a little bit more greed here, and even though he's floating a ton of money, just going to lead into another macro hatch in this here. But still sitting on some money. Larva economy kind of holding him back at the moment. I feel like that macro hatch could have come down sooner, right? Some of his zero cores here. Maybe he thought benno might do something because he's bringing zero cores into his. It's kind of strange here. Maybe he was thinking there would be wraiths again, probably, but again, a little late. It's actually going to be a Trojan. So he probably spotted that Trojan. Almost assuredly he spotted that. So that's we're going to see Hydras coming. So, the Trojan's on the way. It looks like the Nat is likely to be the target and not the main. Sork is coming. No quas at all. Just skips it. That kind of tells me Pr0nogo is going to try to end this before tier 2 at this point. I mean, gas investment's going to be quite high. Whereas benno is doing something a little out of character. A little bit of an early aggression this time, but Pr0nogo's had a lot of time to prepare for this, and he already has a zero cores, and then, you know, there's not only just the one Trojan, right? Like, there's not really a lot of kill power in here with only one Ahmed and 7 Mavericks. Still, though, if he gets in a couple kills on the military and at least pays for itself, then Well, it didn't really. I mean, he killed 2 Hydras, which is nice, but it's a substantial investment of time and resources for what ultimately did not pay for itself. Third stockade, some more idle workers here and there. It was like 5 idle workers at one point. 2 here, right? Like that's what I would say really to focus on a lot at this point, is trying to maximize what actions you do have. Try not to get caught in some kind of lockstep maneuver. Always be conscious of really what's happening. So now they're moving. But you can have a little bit more resources, right? Like that could have been a 4th stockade a little bit sooner. Could have been pumping stuff out of those faster. It's going to be an all Ahmed drop. I like the style. Double hatch. That's probably going to be a circus almost assuredly there. But he doesn't need it. He's looking quite solid at the moment. It's going to be 2 Trojans and the Ansel. If the Ansel joins them, it definitely could do some serious damage. Just have to be mindful that the Spreth doesn't destroy it. And me and Simon Popo's moving down here. So this is taking a long time to actuate, right? Like the idle stockades at some point when he had the money. There's like the little things that are kind of holding him back here. The idea is certainly solid, but like the execution, again, idle workers. When you've got 4 idle workers in a line there, that's a long time of not having looked at that base. Popo's done this so many times that even though you'll see little things like he's got idle workers here too, you know, traditionally it's a little less bit by bit by bit. What's going to absolutely screw him at this point is that, you know, he saw there was a whole bunch of Azura cores and his Ansel just kind of flies over. It doesn't really give too much of a shit. There's nothing really stopping him from just brute forcing everything down at this point. When he has a whole bunch of Azura cores, you have to acknowledge that they're not really that great at defense. They're a front line, and he's probably going to eventually use them to attack you. So more decisive of a front line here was necessary. Meanwhile, Ahmed is getting drone drilled. And Popo had so much money floating around. He was able to build... Oh, it's a disaster. He had so much money floating around, he was able to build 1 million Hydras. Some kerfluffle here, Hydras and such dying to Cyprians on the ramp. A couple planes died. Still pumping out here, thinking he might be in a good chance to win this, but... well, there's still hatches here, right? Like, he lost the main, but it's not really going to slow him down too much. He's still ahead on workers, and he completely shut down this base entirely. So, as far as base trades are concerned, Benno definitely comes out at a loss on that one. Now, he has the Ansel here, and he absolutely can just drop the anchor up here, put the Ansel in the mid there so they can't rush the ramp. And, yeah, see, he's got the idea. Now, these can try to rush it, but they're just going to get murdered. Benno is not policing his units very well, and they are just happily walking into certain death. Many, many avoidable deaths right there. Not repairing this anchor, and it dies miserably. Ahmed gets pulled into the Tyranid factory and is minced. And the Hydras just kind of walk up here. And GG is called. So, when I look at this game and I look at Benno's defeat in it, to me it's not any single individual thing that killed him, but more like a compounding, cascading series of events. There's little odds and ends like some idle workers here, some idle workers there, not building units now instead of later. And then, you know, compounding into stuff like not being cognizantly aware of the push power within the Zerg's army when he had made the one drop and there was a whole bunch of Azera cores and stuff like that, you have to think, what happens if all those Azera cores attack me in, say, 3, 4, 5 minutes with a bunch of other units? Like, right, the one anchor with a handful of Mavericks in it was, and no other units there to help protect it, was not going to stop anything else, so it wasn't really in an ideal place to throttle the larger, beefier, closer range Zerg units. If you wanted to have that choke held, you needed to have it forward with something else on the ledge, and then bring your Cyprians and an Ancial over there, and so on and so forth. So it was like more like a cascading series of just little things that continue to set him behind. And then Popo had otherwise, a fairly clean game. Just little minor, things here and there. There's just ultimately what amounted to was a play of just consistency and execution. And Benno not quite reading that execution and not acting on that execution. Right? Not being, say, like, aware or respectful of the Zerg's push power in either case, right? Like at the first game, with the Quasis, they can morph. He knew the Zerg was in tier 2 and had Zorkas and so on. And in the second game, he was aware that the Zerg had a front line for a early push and was at that point in the past already capable of attacking and pushing. He killed a couple Hydras, but more were built into defense, right? So there was nothing saying the Zerg wasn't immediately going to turn around. He got kind of like tunnel visioned onto the drops and then wasn't able to police the rest of the map and be prepared for the riposte for the Zerg. He had one threat of mind, which was I want to drop, versus what happens when this first drop fails and the Zerg already has an army that I found when I first flew into there, and now I lost a drop that did very little damage. Surely there's going to be a counterattack, right? Like at some point, especially if the second drop is going to occupy a huge amount of my investment at this point. How am I going to make sure that I don't get caught with my water boiler exploding while I'm trying to execute the second drop? Because that's what will happen in a conventional game, is that if the drop fails, that's a tremendous investment. And if that budget doesn't impact the enemy's existing budget and they rebound, then you're just going to get swept because you lost all your investment, right?